everybody. I'm Deborah Pegues. Welcome to Winning with Deborah, where people turn to learn. Did you know that finances is the #1 cause of tension in most marriages and one of the main causes of divorce? This holds true for couples who have lots of money as well as couples who have very little. But why is this area such a battleground? Because we're not carbon copies of each other. We bring different mindsets and attitudes to the table about money, depending on how we were raised or even our past experiences. But today, we're going to learn how to get on the same page before and after we say I do. My special guest and co-host here today to help me talk about these things and how couples can achieve financial intimacy is my favorite person in the whole world, the one who makes me laugh until my side hurts, and has proven to be my biggest fan. And it's the man who gave me my funny last name, Pegues. My husband of 39 years, Darnell Pegues. Welcome to the show, sweetheart.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have some questions here that people have asked us, and we're just going to kind of do a Q&A on how to achieve financial intimacy. And so we want to start out by showing you our wedding picture. We were definitely on one accord that day. Yeah. So I want to show you that. Almost 39 years ago, April 14th, 1979. And so that was what's happened. That's what happened, and that's been, well, it'll be our anniversary soon.
April.
In April, yeah. So we're excited about that. Okay, so one of the first questions is, what has been the secret to your 39-year marriage?
I would say it's three main things. First of all, almost 40 years ago, I gave my heart to the Lord, all of me, and I wanted to be what the Bible says that a Christian should be. The second part was when I made you my wife.
Oh,
that was just, I committed myself to wanting to be the very best husband I could be for you, and to be, as the Bible says, to love you the way Christ loved the church. Then the third aspect would be what I saw growing up, my parents, that union of 50+ years, watching my dad, how he treated my mother, and how I desire to treat you the same way.
Well, I think that's funny that you say that, because my experience was the complete opposite. I didn't want to get married because of how I saw how my mom was treated. So as you know, I was reluctant. It was like, oh God, who needs to be married? And so I appreciate the fact that you had that background. But I do remember asking you, what's your #1 ambition in life? And you said to be the best husband I can be. And I'm thinking, that's it? But I thought that was pretty funny, because I'm like,
it's turned out pretty well.
It's turned out pretty well. I think you've done well. You know, we enjoy talking about financial intimacy, so I want to just define what we mean by financial intimacy. And I'm just going to just kind of read a definition. Financial intimacy, and you'll see it on your screen, is the freedom to openly, honestly, and safely express your financial beliefs, your fears, and your expectations without fear of judgment or ridicule. And so we try to do that. We try not to hold back. As you know, when we were married, I had certain feelings about money. I didn't want to share the money because I felt my mom was never empowered enough. So I thought, and I'm not sharing my money. Everybody's got to be on their own. Yeah. But we worked through it, and you said, okay, we got to be one. And one of our favorite scriptures is Amos 3:3 that talks about how can two walk together without agreeing on the direction. So that has been sort of like a hallmark of our marriage as well. How has being opposites in your money mindsets caused tension in your marriage? How has us being opposite caused tension?
I think, of course, my mindset towards money has always been it's a means to an end. Money is important in the sense that it can help pay the bills and do all of that, but it was never about just making money for me. It never has been. It's always been about what's the plan what do you plan to do with the money? And I believe, as you know, in having a balanced life, that life's not just about working, but there's an ends to that means, and that is enjoying a full life, having a balanced life.
And I see you keep emphasizing that word balance, because I think you're trying to imply that I wasn't.
No, not at all.
Well, because my mindset was, to have the money, that was the end. Like, make sure you have lots of reserves. I didn't want to be broke. I want to not have, like, you know what they say, 2 or 3 months. No, I want 2 years. Yes. You know, I want lots of reserves. And you're like, and therefore what? You can't take it with you. And so we've kind of worked through that by agreeing, as the scripture says, how can two walk together except they agree? Exactly. Okay, so one of the questions is, who manages the money in your marriage, and why?
Well, currently I manage it, but when we first started out, as you know, since you're a CPA, in my mind, it didn't make sense for me, who didn't have quite as much experience as you did with handling money at that point. Didn't make sense to not utilize your skills and things for our marriage and handling our money. But as the years went by, I think you've kind of turned your back on that and allowed me to handle it. And I think I do a pretty good job. And obviously, one of the keys is trust.
Yeah.
And full disclosure, as you well know, there's no accounts that we have that you don't know all the passcodes to. I try to give you that information and let you see it, and you tend to run away from it.
I'm like, I don't want that. I don't feel like all that. But you know what happened early in our marriage? I had a mentor, the late Dr. Juanita Smith, and she said, listen, ladies, and I always remember this because I really did want to handle the money because I felt like I'm conservative, and if I handle it, we'll have all these great reserves. And you were a little bit more fun-oriented, and I figured you would spend a lot of money on vacations. I'm like, who needs to rest anyway? You can rest in heaven. So, but she told me this. She said, whatever area you want a man to be strong in, she said, take your hands off of it. So I wanted you to be strong in this area of finances. And so she said, just relinquish that to him and pray. And so I did, and you've done an awesome job. You already know that. I mean, I don't know anybody whose finances are more organized. And I mean, I can call you and say, where's a receipt for whatever? And you say, it's in that box, 10 envelopes back. And I'm like, gosh, if you ask me, it's like, just go through some purses and find it,
Well, I think the other key to that is you use the person who's best suited to do that, the skills and abilities, the gifts that God's giving them. And one of mine, as you well know, is administration. I tend to be pretty organized and even to a minute detail.
I was going to say, that's an understatement.
So it helps. So it makes it much easier in our life, as you know, when it's tax time and we need to find those little different things and stuff for tax write-offs.
Even our tax man said last time he never had anybody come in that organized.
Yeah, he should have given us a rebate.
He should have given us, he shouldn't have charged so much.
Exactly.
Okay, so what are your top priorities? And this is a question, what are they? And was it a struggle to come into agreement on the order of those priorities? What do you think our top priorities are?
Well,
we already know what they are.
Well, obviously, to honor God.
Okay.
We want to make sure that we do what the Bible says and what we're commanded to do. And the Bible tells us that we're blessed to be a blessing. So we want to be frugal in how we use our funds. We don't want to be wasteful, but yet we want to be generous towards others. And
so our first priority was to pay our tithes.
Absolutely.
Which was no small task initially, because there were times when we felt like we needed that money to close a gap in our financing once we were buying a house, and we just needed just a few $1,000s or whatever it was to close the gap, to have the down payment or whatever. And the enemy, was telling us, like, if you just not pay your tithes for a few times, you could have that money. And we said, no, we're not going to do that. And so our top priority was to pay God. And we like to say this with all humility. In our 39 years of marriage, we have never not paid our tithes. And we know that's the grace of God. That is such the grace of God. When the temptation was there. But you've always been adamant about that. I've never not want to pay tithes. But you said, if we go down, for instance, in the recession of 2008, when your job died for 14 months, and we never missed a beat, but you said, we're going to keep paying tithes, keep giving sacrificially, and you said, if we go down, we're going to go down believing God.
Well, that's true, and I can recall when you made a job transition from a large entertainment company in Southern California to another different company, and I remember we were riding in a car, and that's when I made that statement. It's pretty much, we're going to believe God. If we do go down, we'll do it God's way. So.
I think I want to tell that story because we were in the car, and they had announced that my division would be shut down, and we would all be laid off. I was working at a major entertainment studio, and we were in the car talking, and we had been talking and teaching tithing to people, and I looked up and I said, God, if you let me down, I'm going to tell everybody. And you said, God, that's her side of the car.
Your side of the car.
Don't strike me, Dad.
Exactly.
But God didn't let us down. He was faithful. Okay, another question is, what key financial values drive how you approach your money? What are our values that drive how we manage our money?
Well, Deborah, when I gave my heart to the Lord 40 plus years ago, before we met, one of the things I determined or said I would do by God's grace, the things that I could control, I would do. So in that area, I felt like, I can control whether I'm honest or dishonest. I can control whether I lie or not lie. And so I've endeavored not to be dishonest. And you know, I go to great lengths to make sure that I don't go beyond that bounds of what honest and dishonest is.
And that's kind of almost caused the conflict, because I say, listen, you don't have to tell everybody everything. They ask you,
true.
Don't give them extra details, just answer the question.
That's true.
So once you were on this job where it was a certain type of employment where there was, if you had an accident, and they defined accident, but you had an accident where you broke a mirror or something, and most guys in that arena didn't report it, but you reported it, and they suspended you for 30 days.
30 days, that's correct.
And I'm thinking like, oh my God, I'll never forget this, because when we figured up our bills, we were going to be $1,000 short. And but you didn't consider any of those things. You just told the truth. And but interestingly, one of our mentors called us from back east, and she said it was like about midnight, and she said God said to mail you $1,000. I'll never forget that, because I felt that that was the reward of telling the truth.
Well, if you remember, we had just moved into, at that time, was our dream home, and so our monthly expenditures had increased almost threefold.
Yep.
And it was a situation where I had to make a decision. It was, do you tell the truth? And sometimes there are consequences, many times, from telling the truth, or do you lie and then try to live with that? And I could just could not justify that, because either God is God and he does what he says he'll do, or he's not. And I felt like God would honor that.
Well, you know, we always say that when we lie, it's a slap in God's face. Because what it's saying is, look, I got to protect my resources, or I need more resources, but I don't think you're going to help me, so I'm going to help myself. And so we just decided we're not going to help ourselves. We're just going to we're going to try. And it's not like this is always just so easy. We're just going to do it. We know that sometimes there is going to be a consequence. And so that's okay, because God has always honored that. Okay, so what has been the biggest financial mistake? Because we're talking a lot about the things we do right. Let's talk about some stuff we messed up on. What's the biggest financial mistake we've made?
I don't know if I can identify one specific thing, but I do know there was a season in our lives, in our marriage, where we made a lot of poor decisions regarding certain types of cars, foreign, exotic cars. And,
you say we, because you always say we. When you say we, when you mean me.
Well, we were both. We didn't make. If we did something, it was because we both agreed to it.
Yeah, even if we didn't really agree. We went along to get along.
We went along to get along. Yes.
Okay.
And so there was a period of time, maybe several years, 3, 4 years, where we spent a lot of money on repairs.
I know. I had to have that little car. I just love that little cute car.
Yeah, so fortunately, God delivered us from that, and we got some wisdom, and we've moved on since.
Well, we're going to tell that story. Once we were out walking, we just out walking on a Saturday morning, and we went looking at cars, and we found this convertible red Saab. It was just so cute. It was so cute.
Beautiful car.
And we just like, okay, we were going to sell another car to get it, but we were out walking, so we just buy it. We'll sell it later. And it took forever to sell it. So we ended up having to pay insurance on 3 cars. It was just crazy. But we learned our lesson, and hopefully we're delivered now. We haven't made that mistake. Okay, so after that.
Bless your heart.
Okay, so after that we did one more mistake. We bought an RV.
RV, yes.
Okay, well.
But that wasn't too bad.
That wasn't too bad. At least, you know, that one was your fault. Okay, so.
My fault.
Yeah, it's your fault. So how can we then broach the subject of the financial talk when it's without it taking the romance out of a relationship? And this is even for couples, singles, you know, because that just kind of takes the romance out of the relationship.
Well, I think one of the keys is it's a talk, it's a conversation.
Okay.
It's not a lecture.
Oh.
It's not an interrogation, but it's a conversation, just as we're having a conversation now. And, you know, one of our late spiritual mentors taught us that you can tell anybody anything if you do it at the right time, in the right way, and in the right place. And I felt like if you don't do it when one of the other spouses is tired or hungry or irritated or something, but you find the right thing. And God's given us the ability as Christians to be able to talk and communicate things. One of our favorite scriptures, as you well know, is Isaiah 50:4, and it basically says that God has given us a learned tongue, or a skilled tongue on how to say something, and a skilled ear on how to listen. And so if you're able to actually sit with your spouse and have a normal conversation where you actually ask the person how they came up with their mindset about finances and things.
In a non-accusatory, judgmental way.
Yes,
Yeah.
and then even ask them not only how they came up with how they spend money, but how they earn money. What's their thoughts on that?
Yeah.
And we're not identical, obviously. You can look at us and tell we're not identical.
We're as opposite as we look.
And so we have different backgrounds and different things happened as we were growing up that shaped our mindset about money.
Well, that's why I was so adamant about saving money, because my dad was in control. My mom and my dad have passed away. But I felt like, and she had no skills or education, so I was adamant about this education thing because I didn't want to be subject to a man and needing money like that. And you remember that when I first married you, and I said, I want you to know I shop every Saturday and I don't plan to quit. And you said?
With attitude, you said that. And I said, okay.
Okay. I'm like, that's it? Okay. Yeah, I was prepared for an argument. I prepared for that argument for 30 years.
Sure. You know, sweetheart, one of the things that you've hopefully learned over these last 39 years is that I trust you. I've observed you enough, even in that first year or so, to know that you weren't an unwise woman.
You know I'm cheap.
Well, okay.
That too.
But I know you like to shop, but you do it with a budget in mind.
I do.
And I trusted you. I didn't feel that at that time, and I still don't, that you would just go out and spend money frivolously. So
I think we've been crusaders for that. In fact, I like to show a clip of a show we did with another couple on talking about just various financial topics. Let's take a look at this. The point is, you want to get out of debt because the borrower is servant to the lender. I don't want to be in bondage. You can't do the work of God. You can't have a great time in life if you're always in debt. And so you're going to get on a plan to get out of debt. And there's a strategy.
What if one of you is more excited about getting out of debt than the other?
Doesn't matter who's excited. This is about emotion. It's about proving to God that you're a good steward. You know what I always say in that parable where the master gave 1 talent, 5 talents to them?
Yes.
According to their ability. If you want more money in your finances, then you ask the Lord to show you how you can be a good steward, because he gives to you according to your ability to manage. I always say whatever amount of money you have available to you, even as a couple, that's how much you demonstrated you have the ability to manage.
Wow.
Yes. So let's get on a strategic plan for getting out of debt. And you want to be out of consumer debt because it costs too much money to be in debt.
I agree.
So I like to show couples this is what this is costing you. And don't buy anything you can't afford. If you can't pay cash unless it's an emergency, don't charge it. Ask God to help you to be content with such things as you have.
Yes,
that's right.
I love it.
Yes.
I said I don't even really enjoy shopping that much because I just see all the stuff I don't have. It's like, why am I doing this?
And do you really need all that stuff? And you know, you've traveled abroad. When you go and see how much other people, how little they live off, you come back and you're just grateful that you can water your yard and eat food.
Yeah.
And even here in the U.S., when you see all the storage places, how much stuff people have, and we've bought things and we end up storing it. We don't have room in our homes. And then looking at debt, credit cards, just the interest rates, how much you end up paying, car loans and things. You paid several times more than the value of the car or the things that you bought.
And you can't let other people get you in debt. That's a critical point in this area of finances. When you have a big family and a lot of times they think you look like you are really, really prosperous and they feel entitled to your money. A lot of people are in debt because they allowed their family members, they made loans or they stood for loans, they co-signed. The Bible says if you do that, you are stupid. It says,
it says it right there in Proverbs.
One of the versions says that you are stupid, I think it was the Message Bible. But at any rate, you don't want to do that. So that's why you can have clear boundaries as a couple. You can have a policy that you communicate. We don't make loans, but in the meantime, you help as many people as you can, and you plant those seeds so that you are insured against lack.
Yes, I love it.
Wow, that was a mouthful.
Wow, quite a bit.
Okay, let's move on to some more questions. What are some steps you recommend to a couple whose finances are out of control?
Oh.
Ooh, we don't know anybody like that.
No. Well, actually, I would recommend to them, if I were counseling them or advising them, to get a handle on how much is coming in and how much is going out. Now, I know that sounds very simple. The coming in part isn't really that difficult. Most people know how much money they have coming in. It's just how much is going out. especially people who spend cash
Or
for things.
who cash their checks, which
Well,
we
yeah,
recommend don't ever just cash your
People
check.
do that.
But, yeah, some people get paid, they cash their check. I always say anybody who does it is probably 90% chance they're going to be broke half the time.
Have struggles,
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
a lot of financial struggles. So one of the things I would recommend is that they make sure that they capture all the money that's going out. So write it down. If you use cash, I would suggest try using a debit card.
Okay.
Because most places, reputable places, will accept debit cards.
You mean the people who are not part of the underground?
Well, yes.
I heard that.
So
Okay.
that helps you to track things. And then there are so many easy financial electronic systems out there, very inexpensive, $29, $39,
Yeah.
Quicken and those kinds of things,
Yeah.
where you can just input it. It's very easy, and you can see where the money's going, and it
With the
just
press
makes
of the
it a lot
button, because I
easier.
love the fact that you
Yes.
can do that. I say, okay, how much did I spend on this? And you can just press the button, and the categories are there. It's user-friendly. You don't have to know accounting or any of those things.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just amazing when you really look at your outflows. You'll see that those small cups of coffee that you're buying at some
Yeah,
of the
that
I
some
won't
people who
call
buy
the
that.
name.
Yeah.
There's some people buy those lattes and things. They start to add up really quickly. If you do that every day, that's $25, $30
Yeah.
that you're spending.
But you're not saying you can't have any luxuries. You just need to plan it out.
I just need to
Yeah.
plan it, because if you're struggling financially, as you mentioned, then that couple needs to know, where's the money going? Where are we making enough? If we're not
Yeah,
making
yeah.
enough, then maybe we need to discuss some ways to increase that.
Well, when we were first married, we set a standard, a minimum, a maximum beyond which we'd have to get each other's permission. That worked out pretty well. And it's different for every couple, but we established a certain amount. Any amount above this, then we're going to have to get permission from each other before we spend that money.
Right.
And that helps a lot.
Yes, and what was that number? I know it's changed over
I know.
the
I'm like,
years.
I was like,
Initially, I think it was
100 or 2 or 3
$50, $100
or whatever it
or
was.
something,
But
yes.
depending on your budget, just have that and just stick to it, because the main thing is to come together. Because you can't judge yours or set yours up by anybody else's standards. It's what two couples agree, because agreement is the place of power. We always say that.
Exactly, yes.
That's where God commands the blessing, at the place of agreement. Okay, so here's a hard one for you.
Okay.
If your spouse is financially irresponsible, is it okay to have a secret bank account? Now, before you answer that, I grew up being taught by some ladies who said, always have your private little stash. And I know some of you, because these questions are frequently asked questions. Can I have a private stash if I don't want my husband to know about it? What do you think about it? If you were to find out I had a big stash somewhere, what do you think about that whole thing with a secret account?
Well, I would be shocked to know, since I have all your passwords, I'd be shocked to know that. But I think it's a case-by-case situation. Okay. I don't know that there's a blanket answer that I have or rule for that. It depends on the severity of how out of control the
It's okay to have a secret?
Well, let me just give you an example.
Okay.
So let's suppose, and I'll use the husband since I'm a man, let's suppose the husband has some type of dependency problem.
Okay, an addiction or something.
Addiction or something.
Right.
I don't know that it would be wise for him to have access to cash or monies that you need to pay your mortgage or your rent or something, because you need to protect that.
Well, I'm thinking, though, suppose he makes the money. Like, how do you do that? And we just ask that you pray and ask God for wisdom, but we really think there should be boundaries with consequences. We're really big on boundaries with consequences, meaning that person shouldn't have access to the money. So if you're going to be irresponsible, then we're going to have to talk about how this is going to work out, because this just doesn't work.
And I think in a case where that spouse, if the primary spouse that earns the most is the one that's having the problem, you could have a discussion with them, again, right time, right place, and right way, about maybe having the funds withheld when the person gets paid, that they're automatically sent to an account so that they don't have such easy access to
And again, the whole goal is to come together in agreement. So to talk about, okay, what are our goals? Let's agree that we're still working towards this. Are we still working towards getting out of credit card debt? Are we still working towards having at least 2 months of living expenses in the bank? Let's make sure we are in sync on our goal, because when everybody's working towards the goal, then that makes everything easy. Well, let's see, we kind of wrap up here. I got a couple more questions for us. How do you handle family members and friends who want to borrow money?
Oh, you're just full of tough questions today. Well, as you know, our rule has always been, for the past at least 37 years I know of, that we don't typically loan money to family or friends.
Yeah.
We're generous, we give, because again, as I mentioned earlier, we know that it's important to be a blessing to people.
Right.
And when a person is in need, when we see an actual need,
Yes.
we believe in helping people. We don't believe in enabling people.
Yeah.
And so it's been our experience, as you know, that the times where we've not adhered to that rule,
Yeah.
we've run into some problems with family.
Right, but we
and it
do have them
impacts
sign a note lest they
relationships.
think we're giving them the money.
Yes.
So we're big on that promissory note
If
thing.
we do
if we
do that.
decide that
Yeah,
you're
we
responsible,
decide
because
that.
you're having hard times and you're a responsible person. But
Yes.
once you prove to us you're irresponsible, you're irresponsible.
And I think the 3 times that we've done not
Right.
abided by that,
Yeah, we got burned.
We've had problems.
Okay, last question. What key information must every couple share to be in the loop on regarding their finances? What key info should everybody know about? I want to say one
Okay.
right away. Bank accounts, because if somebody dies, you need to know the accounts and the access codes. I know a lot of couples have secrets, and we share codes with everything, phones, whatever. So I want to throw that one out. But what else should we have?
Well, life insurance.
Okay.
First of all, you should have life insurance on both spouses
Right.
if you're working, and each spouse is important to the viability of the household. But definitely, the life insurance, you need to know who the beneficiaries are on that
Okay.
life insurance, because we know
Right.
of a situation where
Right.
that wasn't so. And then other things.
Household budgets.
Household budget,
Right.
you need to know that.
Make sure you're the beneficiary in the will. Because we heard of a situation where a person had gotten married, remarried, and
Yes.
forgot to change his policy, and his first wife got all the money.
Should have a will.
You should have a will,
Well,
as a
especially if you
minimum.
have children.
Yes.
And so that's very
Yes,
important. It's
absolutely.
critical.
Well, our time is out. I know we're having so much fun, but I thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you, and you're just a delightful man to live with.
Thank you.
Well, that's all we have time for today. So thank you for tuning in today to learn how to get on the same page with your spouse or spouse-to-be. Now listen, if you're already married and you're experiencing financial problems, invite God to come into your partnership and give you the courage and the wisdom to have the talk, starting from the present. Now look, you don't need to go back and dig up stuff. No finger pointing about the past. Just, keep moving forward. Bring everything out into the open. And just, including your old attitudes about who should manage money, who shouldn't. And I believe God will give you the grace to align your financial priorities with each other and to get on the same path to financial intimacy. You can do this. You can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. Well, if you've enjoyed this program today, I'd like to hear from you. I'd like to invite you to go to my website, winningwithdeborah.com, where I have information on money issues and relational solutions. And I just believe you'll be blessed there. We'd like to hear what the feedback you can give us today on how we can make the program better. And we just appreciate your support. God bless you and have a winning week.